Hey guys, it's Penelope in London, and we're looking at the Virgo new moon, and it's happening in a few hours' time. It's now 2022 in the UK, but that's not the time of the new moon. It's happening in the UK in a couple of hours, and for which will be the 7th of September in the UK, which is early hours of the morning. And in the USA, depending on your time zone, it will be different, 8 hours behind, or it will also be at 5 hours behind if you're in New York, as an example. And what we have is that I'm going to show you this chart, what's going on at the moment, and then I'll go over to solar fire because I love solar fire. And what we always got when we have a full new moon, we always have the moon and the sun are conjunct. And when it's a full moon, the moon is opposite to the sun. So that's worth knowing if you didn't know that. And then we've also got, which I found really interesting, was we've got the North Node on Black Moon Lilith. We've got other stuff going on here. We've got a beautiful trine going on between Saturn here to Mars, and it's also Venus up, Mercury, that's what I got that. Mars is actually in opposition to Neptune. And then we've got also the sun, this new moon is trining to Uranus. And we've also got the Jupiter here, which is in conjunct to Mars by the looks of it there. You can just see that green line there. It's an inconjunct. So this is our beliefs and higher education, and it can be grandiosity, it can be spirituality as well, and higher learning. And also we've got, if you look here, you can see this inconjunct to Mars. And then we've got the sun and the moon are in opposition to Neptune. And we've also got this opposition to Mars here. So there's a lot going on this chart today. So I'm going to cover a couple of things. And what I will tell you is that with this moon, if we basically took the moon in Virgo, what does it mean, as an example? And we know that it's a new moon, and we've also got the sun in Virgo at this time as well. But the moon, it's where our feelings of safety are related to order and clarity, and also with our emotions, we want order and clarity. And we may have the need to feel that we need to organize our lives, and that things that have been chaotic and disorganized for us. And we need to try to be more tolerant of our imperfections in life, because there can be some frustration with that, because we want this sense of perfection with the Virgo archetype. And it's better that we can trust and let things run their own way. We can't control everything. And also, not everything always works out to our expectations. Sometimes things work out better, hey? We know this much is true. And then we've got the keywords for Virgo. If we look at what Virgo is in keywords, we would look at discipline, we would look at service, and it's also perfection. It's our self-improvement. It's also humility, and it can be where we're the victim and persecution. It can be crisis. It can be masochism, guilt as well. It's to do with our health. If we look at the sixth house that Virgo holds, what that house means for many of us, if I've got planets in the sixth house, or you've got planets in Virgo, I've got Pluto in Virgo as an example, but I've got a bunch of planets in my sixth house. So I've got a lot of energy there that works through me. It's also to do with healing. It's to do with reality. It's to do with discernment. It's also to do with inferiority, but service and discipline as well. And then if we look at the idea of Pisces as well, which is the opposition to that, we can have disillusionment. It's where we're psychic with Pisces. It's also to do with music and arts, and it can be where we want to escape. It can be addiction. It can be the savior, the martyr. It's where we can feel persecuted. The illusions. Pisces is attached to Neptune, as we know, and we've got Neptune over here, which we can see we've got this in opposition going on. It's where we, you know, the surrender, it's our subconscious, it's where we can be naive, it can feel like a lost identity, and it's our innocence and also suffering. So it's a, you know, beautiful archetype, but also where we can transcend. It's to do with transcendence. It's our subconscious, what lays below the surface. It holds the 12th house, as we know, Pisces. So I could go on with that. But the other thing I wanted to see here is that this North Node and also Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, and there's a beautiful book which, if you put a message in the comments, and then there's a book that I found online by somebody called Laura Walker, and it's The Astrology of the Black Moon. And if we look at that, this transit that's going on in this book, that it relates to, and there's many ways of looking at Lilith, because Lilith wouldn't lay below Adam in the Garden of Eden, so, the whole story or the mythology, doesn't have to be reality, but we live in myth as well, and archetypes. And from the book, quoting from the book, which is very beautiful, it says, when the transiting Black Moon conjuncts the natal or the North Node, let's take the North Node, we begin to experience dramatic change or breakdown in some area of life that is blocking the path of what is for our highest good and best interests. So, it's very interesting that this is taking place here, and also that we've got this trine going on to Mercury, we've got a trine going on to Saturn, and then we've got this here also a trine to, Saturn to Mercury. So this is quite a beautiful chart, in my view, reading on with the Black Moon and the North Node conjunct, when we feel the need to move beyond our restrictions of the past. And although this is often challenging, hindsight will reveal how the changes were necessary to allow other events to unfold. So, it is sometimes what we think is for our highest good is not always for our highest good, or we think we found solutions that maybe aren't the solutions. And we can see in the collective at the moment, the thing I would relate to that what's going on right now, Carl Gustav Jung said in a video and that I've heard from years ago on YouTube, quite a popular video. He says the world hangs by a thin thread, and that is the psyche of man. If we look at the world, if we look at the world and there were no people on it, the world would just be, going through space, and it would have all of this life and clean oceans and beauty and all of the beauty that's on Earth that's been around since the beginning of time. And then we have human beings that, we're on Earth, and we basically, the things that we do, to the Earth, and then the things that we do to each other and the resources. I mean, we've got this Uranus here as well, which is trining to the sun and the moon, and the Uranian energy wants to break free of limitations, but we do have a square that's going on as well, which I'll show you on the other chart, to Saturn as well, the Saturn square Uranus, and this is our resources and our agriculture and our needs, Taurus, and then Saturn is our restriction, and Jupiter is in retrograde at the moment, back to, I believe, 22 degrees from what I recall, and then it will go forward again at the end of the year. So it will move back into Pisces, which will be quite beautiful. That's a beautiful energy. So when we also look at the Black Moon in Gemini, it's the shadow of acceptance. So the theme is the shadow of acceptance, and the primary fear is that of rejection with the Black Moon in the sign of Gemini. And the self-judgment, it's how one compares to others. So the comparing ourselves to others. And if we look at that Black Moon and think about what's going on right now, the divide with the current situation with vaccinations and such like, and people make, huge judgment and comparisons to each other at the moment. And also the issues are whether others approve or disapprove. So there's the very fascinating, the approval or disapproval, and people, falling out with family members over this, and people they love because of different decisions. And the projection is the labeling others as selfish and a distaste for people who failed to do the right thing. So what one considers, one man's meat, another man's poison, so to speak, what one thinks is correct doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And we can see that, that people will make different choices because we're all on a soul journey. you know, what's right and what's wrong. There's a total unknown. When we don't know if something is the answer to something, then we have a choice to make. And some people will say that is the answer. And so you can see that the judgment going on there, it's turned into a nightmare, because what is the right thing? We actually don't really know. And a lot of people are not willing to, you know, take that stance, that we just really don't know. We don't know. But we can see that this is, whatever's going on is to do with our health as well, and routines, which is the Virgo sun and moon. And also the goal with that Lilith in Gemini would be to not care, you know, if people like or want you, to not compare yourself to others, but to express your individuality. So we're here to express our individuality clearly. And, you know, we can't make decisions based on the unknown. So, you know, because of that, we're making different decisions. So we will heal and transcend when we examine, when we are not being selfish or operating from our true self. So we want to check, am I operating from my true self ultimately? Am I operating out of fear, or am I operating from my true self? The other thing we've got, I'll read through some aspects when I go over to Solar Fire, but what I want to do is show you now my chart. So let me make sure this is my chart here. And I'm just going to make sure by resharing the screen. Okay, so this is my chart. So this is the full moon for me. And I want to explain to you how that works, because if you're looking at your own chart, you want to understand what is the moon doing for you, you know, because the new moon, what house is it falling in? So for me, it's falling in my 9th house. Let me get my pointer again. So definitely, let's get here. Okay. So you can see that the moon and is falling on my Pluto. So you see that's 15 degrees there. If you take the sun, and you look at the transit, you can see that the moon and the sun are both at 14 degrees of Virgo, right up here. And my Pluto and my Uranian energy, Uranus, is on the 15 degrees. Now, for a lot of people born in 1960, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those years, 66, 67, 65, you'd have to look at your own chart, but what degree. But you will see that for the babies born in the 60s, this is basically hitting Pluto and Uranus for many of us. And that to me is very appealing, because a lot of us that were born in that period are quite sort of lost souls, because also a lot of us have, if you can see that my Saturn here is in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces, Saturn in water, it can create for a lot of loneliness. So a lot of people, but saying that Saturn takes 29 years around a chart, so it takes about 2.5 years through a sign on average, if I've got that right. And then, you know, people may have, you know, there's Saturn in Aquarius, or they may have it in Aries through those 60s. But we do know that, you know, I was born in 1966, and you can see here that Saturn is at 27 degrees for me. So there are some people maybe born in 1967 that will have Saturn, 68 that will have Saturn in Aries, and some people who were born before who will have Saturn, maybe, I'm not sure, but I would say probably Aquarius. Some people are going to have Saturn in Aquarius, so we can see what's going on there too. So for me, if you take this, the sun and the moon, what is it doing? The moon is quintile to my south node. So this is quite beautiful. It's a spiritual element. So this is quintile, that's 72 degrees to my south node. It's also, the sun is also hitting my south node, a quintile. And also the sun is also hitting my ascendant as well. So this is hitting my ascendant. And that's quite beautiful energy for me. I quite like that. And then also the moon is conjunct my Pluto. The sun is conjunct my Pluto here. You see that? It's conjunct. And then the sun is also quintile to my Jupiter. So the sun is quintile to my Jupiter, which is here. So for me, this speaks to me quite beautifully. And I know what's going on in my life, what's being resolved for me. with the Mars opposite Neptune transit, what I'm going to do is go back to solar fire, or not back, I'm going to go over to solar fire now and show you here. So looking at this chart and the spotlight here, you can see got the ability to move this chart as well. If we look that, you know, there's a lot more energy lines going on here because I use a lot more aspects on when I use solar fire to see what's going on. We can see that, that although we've got a weak square at the moment to the Uranian energy and Saturn, it's still in square, but it's apart. But Saturn will be going forward again, and it will become in an exact square again later this year. So they've been dancing together all year, and that's Saturn energy is our restriction, but it's also teacher in a way, you know. And then the Uranian energy is where we're breaking free of limitations. What's very interesting with Uranus moving through Taurus, we can see all of the volcanoes, we can see the weather systems. They've been quite shocking for humanity. You know, look what happened in New York, quite really shocking, but we see that happen in other countries. I'm in the UK, and I wouldn't be surprised to see something happen with the Thames at some point, because, you know, the water and the water systems, we can see that, you know, the world is changing, and whether we're playing, you know, who knows whether the weather's being played with. I mean, this is questionable. You know, what goes on behind the scenes of those in power. You know, people say to me about chemtrails and stuff like that. You know, the regular people, you know, very rarely are going to know the truth of what's going on. You know, the weather systems being played with, and the agriculture. I mean, we're hearing these stories, and, you know, people are standing up to these sort of ideas and what's going on. So when we look at the Mars opposite Neptune, we're basically looking at feelings, you know, some sort of discouragement and weakness and feelings of inadequacy, and it can bring low energy as well. And it's not a time to be striving hard at this time, you know, because we can feel a bit sort of off at this time. I don't know if anybody's been feeling that, but, you know, when you look, Mars is moving off, but this has been going on for the last week. So I've actually needed a lot more sleep the last week, which is unusual for me. I normally need little sleep, but the last week I felt like I've needed to sleep more. And also, you know, the extra stress of performing would only leave us more susceptible, you know. So it's been a good time for me to rest, because if we push ourselves, when we got this Neptunian energy going on, and we got Mars there, which is, you know, our go, and it's our drive, Neptune is sort of holding us back. So we want to go with the flow with these things and not push ourselves. The Sun is also opposing Neptune, and this can make us overly empathetic, which is not a bad thing, but also we don't want to overly sacrifice ourselves either, because again, we can feel cheated if we do that, you know, if on hindsight. And, you know, we want to stay away from anything that takes us out of our body, drugs, alcohol, stuff such like. The Moon trine to Uranus, which is applying at this point, it's the Moon trine in Uranus. It's harmonious, and we need emotional independence and freedom in our environment. So we do need our freedom at this time, and we may feel, you know, be a bit more unconventional, but we also have the Moon opposing Neptune, and this, you know, is similar to a conjunction, and it's where we're searching for something, you know, transcendental, something that's, you know, esoteric type stuff, and where we're wanting to, you know, and also where we can be feel a bit of confusion as well. There is confusion at the moment because we're being told one thing about, you know, what works, and then we're having all of these rules. There's a lot of confusion around at the moment. Obviously, we clearly are aware, and we're all trying to solve, but we need to work together, you know, and there are separations going on all over the place. The Mercury is trining to Mercury, you can see here, is trining to Saturn, and it's harmonious, and it helps us to solve everyday problems as well. The Venus up here is square to Pluto, which, you know, the Mars opposite Neptune is, you know, can be also mystic and our imagination and our fantasy, but we can prefer that to reality. That's the thing we've got to watch there. The Mars trine in Pluto is quite beneficial. I was going to say the Venus square Pluto first, actually. It's where we can have a love-hate, and we can feel this very deeply and intensely. and we can hide our true passion and as well. And it's also where we want to, you know, there can be jealousy and stuff like that going on, and we can be a bit paranoid with this Venus, because Venus is our needs and Pluto is transformation, but it's also the under that, you know, it's got a dark, I don't know, like I said, dark side that Pluto has, but it's very scorpionic energy, Pluto. It's quite scorpionic. So we want to watch out for that. Neptune is sextile to Pluto. Mars trine Pluto is quite beautiful. It makes us, you know, it can make us very hard working and whatever. I actually have Mars trine to my Pluto, and it's where we're not easily discouraged. Even, you know, when we have issues going on, we can sort of keep moving forward. And it's where we also have the ability to achieve our objectives despite the obstacles. So what else can I say there? The node is square to the moon at this time. So you can see that the node is in a weak square. Let me see this. Node trine Saturn, node square in the moon. It's separating, which is good. The node is trine to Mercury, and it's good for, you know, gives us some intelligence, which is quite good because we need that as well to keep but also we can accept criticism, and it's where we don't avoid conflicts, which we need to do at this time. We don't want to be avoiding conflicts at this time, and we don't want to just, you know, lay down and just, you know, we want to think, what do we want for ourselves? The node trining Saturn is the positive thing, is where we go overcome our challenges, and we can be consistent with our responsibilities and walk the path that we need to walk. And we have high standards and ambitious goals for ourselves. So I think this to me looks like a good new moon for all of us, but you would have to look at your own chart. I would also add that I'm going to show you the chart from the 8th of March, 2020, when lockdowns began to occur throughout the world. Let's go back to this. And then I'm going to go to, I think it's this chart. Let me come out of my spotlight. And I want to undo that. Let me see. Spotlight, and we go here. Okay, so this chart was the 9th of March 2020. Let me see the time here. Okay, there's no time on this chart because I set it at 12 noon. So if you can see that when we had those lockdowns that week, we had Mars and was just about to be heading over Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. So we had the great Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunction, Jupiter-Saturn. And then when we've come a long way since then. You know, if we think of everything we've been through in the last year, we had, you know, the lockdowns, we had Italy lockdown, we had the flights all cancelled, and people didn't know, you know, we didn't know whether we were coming or going. We were in a lot of fear. We also didn't know, you know, people were talking about the time and calling people conspiracy theorists about vaccine passports and stuff like that have come to pass. So it's very interesting when people say conspiracy theorists, you know, it's very interesting what's going on. And it relates back to when we look back in history to wars and things like that, what, you know, how behavior is playing out right now, you know, where people are being very hard on each other and not being very forgiving. But at that time, we had Black Moon Lilith was on Chiron, you know, the wounding of Chiron and Black Moon Lilith, which is, you know, she wants to throw things off. But she, you know, we need to learn to do it in a way that's beneficial to us and doesn't just, as Lilith threw off the idea of, you know, laying below Adam, if we want to look at it that way. We had these Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn was square to Uranus. And also we had this conjunction with our needs, which is Venus, and the moon was opposite to the sun, which was the full moon. And this is our health, you know, this weakened as this the Neptune and in Pisces, with the sun in Pisces, this weakened the, you know, our health and well-being. But that moon, you know, really has changed a lot for us. You know, it's how we are going to look at health in the future as well. It's extreme transformation that we've been going through, and we've only just, you know, begun really. Because if I go back to the news share and I go back to this chart, and I'm going to go what I'm going to actually do is go a couple of years ahead. So watch this. We've got years. I'm going to show you that this Pluto is going to move into Aquarius, and we'll look at when that happens. So we've got Pluto 26 degrees, that's 2022. And also, you guys in the USA, you have your Pluto return for the USA, but I've done other videos on that. I'm not going to go into that now. Next year, you know, you have Pluto return at 27 degrees, I believe, for the USA. So you're going through huge things. We're all going through huge things, but the USA is going through massive transformation at this time. So this is the 7th of September, 2023. Then we go another year ahead, that's 2024. If you watch this, and I'll take it now by weeks ahead, or actually, yeah, why not? Go weeks ahead. I'll keep moving. There you go. So we have, I think it goes in 2024, and then it will go retrograde, I believe, again. But this is quite amazing. We're going to have that. That's going to be there for 20 years. It's going to do one more RX retrograde back into Capricorn, and then it will leave. And you know, Pluto Capricorn, we knew, the astrologers knew that this was the breakdown of patriarchal rule, whatever that means. You know, the people are coming together in their own ways, and groups and people are being set up, and light minds and new things are being created as a result of what's the complete breakdown of Pluto in Capricorn, the end of Pluto in Capricorn. I mean, astrology is just speaks it. It's saying it all. Fascinating stuff. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back with more in a couple. I think on Thursday I'm doing Uranus through the houses and the retrograde, although it happened a few weeks ago. I'm going to do a nice video on that with a friend of mine. So I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.